In today's show, you'll hear investor perspectives on the COVID-19 impact on the cannabis market. This is Investor Perspectives. I'm the host of Investor Connect, Hall T. Martin, where we connect startups and investors for funding. It's the time of COVID-19. Cannabis is currently gaining regulatory approval across the U.S. The lockdown has declared certain sectors, including cannabis, to be an essential service. We have investors and startup founders describe the impact of COVID-19 on the cannabis market. I hope you enjoy this episode. My next guest is Ben Larson of Vertosa, an advanced infusion technology company in the cannabis space. Were there any sectors that you think are negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic?
You know, looking at the raw numbers, I wouldn't say that anything has necessarily negatively impacted. I think emotionally, the trend moving away from smokables and even vapes tends to persist. But it's always interesting in the cannabis industry, right? You're on this growth curve that is going to counterbalance any decrease in any particular consumption method, right? And so you have these kind of intersecting curves that you're always assessing, so what we like to do in the industry is kind of compare in relative terms. And so what we see as far as relative growth is the increase in non-smokables, like I was saying. So beverages is a very popular topic, something that we hold near and dear to our hearts at Vertosa. So, we're really excited about kind of some of those new categories that are emerging. It's kind of the intersection of all these things, right? It's beverages. We're just coming on the scene last year. New technologies, we're allowing those to happen and providing a new experience in comparison to, older methods, a faster onset without having to smoke or vape. It just so happens that COVID hits right as those are ramping up and people are hanging out with their families, maybe looking for a more discreet consumption method, something that's a little bit more, just mainstream acceptable. Everyone's used to a beverage, we have them sitting on our desk. We have them in our hands when we're relaxing after work. And so it's just a really natural method. But what we are seeing is the technology that drove the advent of these ready to drink beverages, emulsion systems, which is what our specialty is. It's also spawning new technologies or new kind of form factors. So, mouth sprays, for instance. There's this great brand in Southern California called clickspray.com. It's just a wonderful experience and you get this fast absorption. It's a microdose, but it's just a new way to consume cannabis. We're also seeing, emulsion enhanced tinctures, again, allowing you to feel the onset faster or add it to other water-based products. And then topicals, really providing better penetration, through the skin. And so we're just seeing this intersection of, market acceptance, people looking for discrete, delivery mechanisms, and then just general knowledge like permeating into the public. And so it's a real beautiful time to be in the industry. If for the creatives, the technologists, the brand owners, like everyone's coming together to really kind of create that future of the industry. And so we're excited about it. We get to work with cool partners like Nug, who, took an old take on Otter Pops, like the frozen juice, and they infuse that and it provides a nice summer treat. Again, because it's liquid based and it's like a popsicle, you're getting that full exposure to the emulsion system. And so it's like absorbing into the bloodstream really quickly. And so we're just seeing a lot of excitement over these edibles. And then kind of, I guess, the nuance that is also coming on top of that is the experience-based products, right? It's not enough, or it's not going to be enough in the future to just simply put CBD or THC into a product. You're going to want to actually deliver an entouraged experience. And so really exploring what we can do with terpenes and other minor cannabinoids, other compounds that exist in the plant. And these new technologies really make it possible to feel the difference. And that wasn't previously experienced before with traditional methods. Well, traditional non-smokable methods. Everyone that consumes generally knows that when you smoke vape, it's a very quick way to feel the differences in strains and different compounds.
So, there's over 700 varieties of cannabis out there. How far have we gotten into those different strains that is left unexplored? How much more room is there for growth and new product development based on the number of strains that we currently know about so far?
Yeah, it's interesting. We, as an ingredient manufacturer in the middle of the supply chain, we're pretty agnostic to the types of ingredients we work with. We get really excited over just high quality, isolated compounds, but we get equally excited over sun-grown full spectrum cannabis out of the Emerald Triangle, right? So if you think of it in that fashion, not only do you have 400 strains, if not more, but you also have 400 compounds and the infinite number or relatively infinite number of combinations of those compounds. And so what we're doing in the lab every day and with our partners is combining these different compounds and seeing what those effects are. What happens if you put 5 milligrams of CBN with 5 milligrams of CBD and 10 milligrams of THC? And then what happens if you kind of pull the different levers and change those ratios? And so if you start thinking of it that way, when you have 400 compounds, 400 different strains, you truly have infinite opportunities to create unique products. And that's what makes cannabis so exciting. It's not just alcohol, right? Or some other substance. It truly is like this kind of, it's an artist's dream, right? You get to like create art with products. And that's what's really exciting for us. And we get to, like I said, work with people on both ends. We work with the best growers and ingredient manufacturers, and then work with the brands trying to deliver a particular experience to their consumer.
And is there a way to customize those different combinations for different people? Is there any medical theory behind that you're following, or is it just trial and error of trying to put something together that works better for this person or for that condition or what have you?
That is a fantastic question. The one thing we know as operators in the cannabis space is we can always use more research. For a long time, the federal government banned research on the cannabis plant because they classified it as a Schedule I drug. So we're kind of making up for lost time, and we're trying to find ways to accelerate the research as quickly as possible. So there's a few different efforts that we're involved in. Some are internally driven. We've teamed up with an FDA and DEA licensed pharmaceutical lab here in the Bay Area to really truly do efficacy testing. We're testing the bioavailability, the onset of our emulsion systems. But at the same time, we're doing mass consumer studies with research partners, brands, to understand how the consumer is choosing to use it. And that's super important when it comes to cannabis, because everyone has a very unique endocannabinoid system. And that impacts how consumers experience and feel the various compounds in the plant. And there are certain compounds or compound combinations that, yes, have a general kind of trend as far as experience, like this strain will make you sleepy, or this strain is good for being creative, or what have you. But the unique experience for each individual user and the quantity that consumer needs to consume to achieve that par experience is quite variable. And so that does make it difficult. But we're excited. Like I said, for those who are just curious and creative, this is an incredible industry to be involved in. And we learn so much every day just working in this industry.
Are there any initial experiments you can share with us about the results? Any exploratory areas you think are going to be very fruitful for you, even if it's not yet all the way complete?
Yeah, initial results just on our technology alone, which again is we have a series of nano and micro emulsions, which is basically taking the oil droplet, breaking it down into tiny little droplets, and then encapsulating them in a water dispersible solution, right? And so we're taking this highly hydrophobic viscous oil and making it capable of stabilizing in water. And so when you take these small droplets and bring them into the body, they're able to be absorbed into the bloodstream much faster, whether it's through the soft tissues in the mouth or simply the fact that they can break down that much easier. It allows the stomach to really quickly break them down and absorb into the bloodstream. So you don't have to wait for that long onset. And so what happens with a faster onset is that the experience is more predictable. You can feel it more. A little bit goes further. And so with all these things, it's a lot easier to control the experience and make sure that you're getting the efficacy that you're looking for. And what we found this leads to is a more consistent experience. And I think historically, that's been one of the biggest criticisms of cannabis. It's hard to determine the experience you're going to have. But with these new consumption methods, it's a lot easier to control. And then on the non-consumable side with topicals, we're seeing similar benefits, again, through the studies that we're doing, that these smaller droplets are able to penetrate the skin further. So if you're talking about topicals that are designed to reduce swelling or redness, you're going to see a much more efficacious application, or perhaps just simply using less material. So it's really exciting. We are doing the hard work on the science side to truly understand this and have the data to back it all up. And, every day when we are developing a new product, we're really excited just simply by the feedback that we're getting from the product makers. Taking a tablet and bringing the onset time, the time where you really notice an effect occurring, from say 25 minutes down to less than 5. I mean, that is a phenomenal difference when you're talking about comparing one product to the next. And so as an ingredient supplier, we're pretty agnostic to the brand, right? We work with everyone. And for us, it's just about lifting up the entire industry, providing better products to the end consumer and working with our brand partners to make it happen.
My next guest is David Hess of Trust Capital. So what new applications do you see coming up within the sector in the next 12 months?
New applications? I joke with people, I wonder if I'm going to see a vape device that will also take my temperature, right? So if I'm going to pass my vape pen on to a friend, they can see quite quickly that I'm healthy and that I'm okay. Will we see that? Maybe. I don't know. I think we're going to see a continuation of what we saw prior, right? We're going to see more on the side of wearable technology and how that relates to cannabis. I think for a while, many cannabis brands were trying to understand how consumers were feeling when they had the product, right? And it's a challenge to get somebody that just medicated with cannabis to go ahead and input that feeling 10, 20, 30 minutes later once they're medicated, right? But if it's a wearable technology, that's something that they're not going to have to do manually. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more as far as that goes. We're going to see more acceptance of other cannabinoids, and the talk won't be just about THC and CBD. Some of the other minor cannabinoids, CBG, CBN, and some others which we've started to hear about and see some products utilizing over the past year or so. We're going to see a lot more of that. And I think we're going to see a lot more collaboration from the companies that are already in this space, as opposed to potentially over the next year or two, not as much in that startup way of startup, because the funding is just not going to be there like it has been.
So you're talking about cannabis devices merging with wearable devices. So you take not only the cannabis, but you're also having temperature and other parameters monitored at the same time. Do you see anybody doing that right now?
I see a couple that we're looking at that have started to, and on a very, very simple level. What does my heart rate do? And this is what an Apple Watch, for example, is already doing. So it's just tapping into that technology. It's nothing new. So when I'm medicating, like I said, very simply, what's that doing to my heart rate? Is it increasing it? Is it decreasing it? And then we go from there. But it will start leading to an understanding of simple data that can really tell us a lot of things about the plant, rather than just the anecdotal, that we've been hearing for a long time.
And my next guest is Marcus Estes of Chromasignate, a technology company in the cannabis space. Well, so what new applications are coming up in the sector that we'll see in the next, say, 6 months now?
So if by applications here, we mean like formats, one thing that I want to kind of start looking at is COVID consumption patterns are, number one, changing how people get their hands on product. So new forms of product discovery, I think increased experimentation with e-commerce and delivery. I think that's a huge trend, and it will only continue. What we have right now is an 800-pound gorilla with ease. but we've got a lot of upstarts that are pecking at it from below. So I would look at consumption patterns and COVID's effect on that and say, how are people are they still going to be in the retail store? Is the bud tender story still an important distribution story? Or can we start looking at other, I think really you could say tech is going to disrupt there. Secondly, I want to talk about inside of the formats, as we say, I think the vanguard of enlightened customers get more enlightened with cannabis every year. The more if you're the type of person that likes to engage in a little bit of recreational cannabis, you tend to learn more. I think about my own journey with beer. I grew up in the South. I grew up drinking kind of, the equivalent of Miller Lite. And then over time, I live in Portland, Oregon now. I'm age 40 and I have a very refined palate. And I don't so much lean on the brands that I started with. Same thing in cannabis. You get a more enlightened consumer quarter over quarter. And what happens is we start looking into more and more interesting things about the plant. And one thing I'll highlight here are brands that are playing with cannabinoid marketing, meaning that basically everyone starts off thinking THC, that's the psychoactive thing. And of course, you probably all heard at this point, CBD is a new cannabinoid that has been a massive consumer thing. CBD is a whole different market because in fact, if you have a low enough THC content, it's legal. You can buy some of the stuff at CVS. But beyond CBD now, it's actually a pretty interesting investment strategy. If you believe that consumers will continue to look for new science, there are things like CBG. That's one that almost no one's heard of at this point, right? CBN, THCV. These are all different aspects of the plant. Most of them aren't actually that psychoactive. This is what's interesting. They're not going to really get you stoned in the traditional sense. That's what THC is for. But some of these other cannabinoids can do great stuff. They can chill you out. They can actually make you more alert. They can create mild euphoria. And when paired together, I'll call out a specific brand here to give you an example of what I consider kind of next level cannabinoid marketing, is a company called Level. And they are only found in the California market today. But if I had to make a brand bet, I would want to see their financials, but just from a consumer perspective, really great design. They'll tend to make these supplements, and some of them, again, it's not about being stoned at that point. There's stuff you can take that'll just give you a clear-headed morning. And having tried it and liked it, and they're not cheap, they're kind of, you could think of some of this market as almost like connected to supplements and nootropics. But I would look into all this stuff. Try to figure out if you're kind of a techie person that wants to look into plant science and get good at that, you could sort of say which brands might be looking at that more sophisticated consumer through advanced plant science. And I think that might be one trend that would see go on the rise.
Thank you for joining us today. As always, be sure to leave a review, subscribe to this podcast, and share it with others. Let's go start up something today. Halti Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for the basis of investment decisions.